I've been growing in my garden for 100 days, and I started the season with the perfect idea of what my garden would look like. I made a plan and I started planting all the things I hope to harvest during the growing season. But the weather never cooperates. I had high winds, we've had tornadoes, and we've had consistently cool temperatures, surprisingly. And it was tornado after tornado. But my little garden continued to produce, regardless of the wind or the water or even the temperature. But I'm a determined gardener, so I started my growing season even in cold soil. So I grew those things that I knew didn't care too much about warm soil temperatures, things like radishes. They grew beautifully, and I had no concerns regarding pests early in the season. I was also able to get a bumper crop of spinach because I had such cool temperatures early spring, and I did not have to worry about my mustard greens. It was no boat mustards for me because the temperature and the soil stayed so cool for so long. I was able to truly take advantage of cut and come again harvest on my leafy green vegetables. But eventually, by mid June, it warmed up, and boy, did it warm up. We had a week of heat, and that kicked everything into gear. My herbs just started exploding. Things that I thought did not make it through the winter, they actually came back, particularly my thyme. So I was able to harvest my herbs over and over again. And to date, early August, I have managed to dry enough herbs to refill all of my containers. Now, my onions, a different story. Because of the wet and the cold and the high winds, I had to harvest some of my onions early. Many of them were beaten down by hail. The same thing with my potatoes. I had to harvest a little early because I had flash flood conditions in my area and I didn't want anything to rot. So the onions that I could leave a little longer, they really sized up nicely. But I don't think any of my onions made it to full maturity date. I was able to harvest weekly lettuce because it was so wet and lettuce love moist soil. My carrots, even though the soil was cold, it took my carrots a long time to mature. I was able to harvest weekly Swiss chard. I was able to gather celery when I needed it. And I was able to come back around again and harvest more herbs. And I spent the month of July harvesting herbs. I started harvesting out some peppers, and my pepper plants are continuing to grow for me. So, this has truly been a very difficult growing season with all of the flash flooding, high winds, and just overall damage in the garden. But the garden continues to produce. So I want to share real quick some of my green beans. Now, my green beans have been, they've been on the vine a little too long and they're kind of overgrown, but they are quite plentiful. It's amazing how a tree can be shredded by the wind, but the green beans stay on the vine. So I'm just going to harvest these real quickly and then I'll share how much I got today. And it looks like I'm getting these just in time. I like mine's about the size of a pencil without being able to see the pods protrude through the beans. And I must say, having the green beans hang down at you is a great way to harvest green beans. So here's my first round of pole beans, but I also have bush beans. So let's go grab some bush beans. Here's my bush beans. They are coming to the end of their life, and I will be pulling this out today to grow an additional crop, probably some mustards and turnips. But I want to show how prolific and how many bush beans I have here. I think the easiest way to harvest these would be probably just to pull the whole plant, sit down in a nice cool kitchen and pull the beans off, particularly with bush beans. Because I've harvested from this section, this is actually a second flush of these yellow wax beans. And as you can see, they are a little on the gigantic side. Some of them have probably gone too far. This is the way I actually like my beans to look. So despite the summer storms, the power outages, fallen trees, I still have food in the garden. And you know, plants want to survive, they want to produce. So never give up on your garden. My garden looks horrendous. I had floodwaters, so my mulch is not in my bed. A lot of my leaves on pretty much everything looks like this, and it's not insect damage. This is 80-mile-an-hour wind damage. The same thing with my Swiss chard. This is not insect damage. This is wind damage. Now these are blue lake bush beans as well. I pulled them off the same plant. They are humongous. So I'm going to try them and see how they are. Um, and I'll probably eat it. It'll make a great stir fry. So I do have lots of these as well. And this is also the second harvest. And this is the second flush off of my Blue Lake bush beans. And they are pretty gigantic, you know, just huge. I normally will harvest Blue Lake bush beans about the size of a pencil. So this is a varying size of beans, and I do have several options here. I could just pull all of my plants out and do a whole new round of bush beans. I have about 60 growing days left, or I can just move on to the next season. So my plan is just to go ahead and plant mustards and turnips in this area. So as you can see, there are lots of beans hiding in here. Oh, with today's harvest, I will be pulling out, but I will begin pulling these out and starting my mustards and turnips, knowing that I have plenty of beans to harvest from my pole beans. So I went ahead and just pulled everything because I'm expecting so much more rain and I don't want to leave an environment where disease can set in. My green beans were at the end of their life. They were bush beans and they are harvestable at 50 to 60 days. So they go to maturity in 50 to 60 days. So it only makes sense to just go ahead and get started on fall planting. I'm going to grab a few little tomatoes, but my tomato plant had been topped by the 80-mile-an-hour wind. So they are establishing new leaders. And this is what I was able to collect today. After 100 days of growing, I have what looks like maybe 2 gallons of green beans. So now let's take a quick look of what's coming next for my garden. For fall, I've started some cabbage. So I started this bed. I'll have 1 cabbage in this pot, and this will become my cabbage bed. It has been, it's been growing onions, and now I see volunteer tomatoes coming up, which is not a good thing. So this will be my cabbage bed. Here I have butternut squash growing. This is the Waltham butternut squash. It matures in about 80 to 90 days. They've been growing for a good 20 days now. I have roughly 60 days remaining before my typical first frost. So I do believe I can get a harvest. I was successful last year in getting a harvest. Parting the shambles, that's my garden. I have plenty of flowers on my pole beans, so I will be expecting to get additional pole beans in these last 60 days. My herbs have flushed out beautifully since being harvested, so I expect to be able to harvest quite a bit of herbs and some flowers. Even the celery, I have fought the mealybugs, and now I have celery coming back in, so I will be able to harvest these wonderful leaves to create a celery salt. And look at the chives, they have just grown like I've never cut them before, so I'll be able to harvest some chives. Okay, my pepper plants are continuing to be quite healthy, and I should be able to harvest additional peppers until my actual frost. Here I have some Yukon Gold potatoes growing in. They're still quite green, but I expect to be able to harvest this before the 1st of September, just to give myself some additional Yukon potatoes. I have plenty of mint. Now my experiment this year has been sweet potato vines. Don't know if this will make it. They've been growing since June 10th, I believe. So hopefully I can get a harvest. Even if I get one potato out of this whole container, I would be happy, because it meant that there's a possibility of growing potatoes in my garden. And here I have another planting of carrots. They are quite waterlogged because, as I mentioned, we just had a flash flood conditions here, and we had 80-mile-an-hour wind, but the carrots are still thriving, and I hope to have carrots. So the first 100 days has taught me that it doesn't matter what the garden looked like. It's about what you learned and what you produced. So if anything today was entertaining, informative, or halfway interesting, consider hitting that like button, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day.